Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome back to another episode of Free Plugin Weekly. Today we're checking out the Sean Pandy drum instrument from Rob Chokehold. This is a great multi-sampled free drum instrument that's perfect for doing drum replacement work. And you know, Logic has a lot of really great stock plugins and instruments and samples, but for heavier genres like hard rock and metal, it kind of lacks in that department. I'm not really a big fan of any of Logic's drum sample libraries when it comes to recording rock and metal, so this is a great free alternative for doing drum replacement. The instrument itself has 8 different sample sounds, and they're mapped to your normal MIDI drum keys. So if I pull up my keyboard here, on C1 there's the kick, on D1 and E1 is the snare, F is this sub-blower sample, it's like a low sub-bass. And then you have 4 toms, the low tom on G, the mid tom on A mid-high tom on B, and then up on C2 is the high tom. Then you also have individual volume, mute, and pan controls for each of these. There's also a built-in reverb. Although I'm not really a big fan of the reverb, so I'll just leave this out. Now there's a couple things to keep in mind when you download this. There's actually 2 versions of this. There's a multi-output version, so these are all the multi-output downloads here, and then there's a standard stereo version. So with the stereo version, all of the samples, all the sounds go to the same output. They go to the output right on the channel strip. But if you use the multi-output version, it sends each instrument to a different output in Logic, and you'd have to create a multi-output instrument for that. And one other thing to keep in mind is in the multi-output version, there's no reverb and there's no pan control for the master fader. All right, so I've got a multi-track drum example here. I've got kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, 3 toms, some overheads, and some room mics. So typically what you do with drum replacement is you would use the kick in mic, the snare top mic, and the close tom mics to layer a sample along with the original recording, or completely replace the original recording with a sample to give it a bit more punch. So there's no effects on this whatsoever. This is completely unprocessed. And there's some spots with some pretty fast double bass over here as well. So the toms are a bit boomy sounding, and some of that's always going to be in the overhead tracks and in the room tracks. But if I can layer the kick and snare and toms with something that's a bit more punchy, a bit more pre-processed, and a tighter sound, it'll really help the drums overall to sound more tight. So if you've never done drum replacement in Logic before, Logic has a built-in drum replacement tool that's really helpful for things like this. So what you can do is select a track. I've got my kick-in track here selected, and press Control D, not Command D, Control D. And what this will do is it'll analyze the transients in the recording. So I'm going to zoom in a bit here, and I'm going to make sure that I'm getting 1 MIDI note per transient. And it looks like I am. What you can do is you can adjust the relative threshold here. This will effectively adjust the sensitivity. So the goal here is to not have misfired notes like here. We have an just background noise from the snare drum triggering a kick note, but you also don't want to have certain notes not being triggered. So you have to sort of find a sweet spot here with the threshold. So I think that's a pretty good threshold setting there. And then what you can do is you can choose what trigger note you want this to be on. If you choose auto and then choose kick up here for your instrument, it'll automatically place that note where it needs to go, which is normally C1, but you can also manually select it here as well. So I could say, okay, I want all of these to be on C1, and then just hit OK. And then I have my MIDI replacement track right underneath my original recording. Now, Logic does assign a sample for this, but they're usually not that great for heavier genres. So this is where the Sean Pandy drums are really helpful. So let's see what this replacement kick sounds like with the whole drum kit in. And you can hear that when it's just by itself. When I pulled the kick in and out tracks down, it sounds kind of thin, but it does have that front end punch. So it usually helps to blend the original recording with your trigger track or your replacement track. And you can really tell when I pull it out. Let's check out that fast double bass section. And one of the great things about this drum kit is it has velocity layers, but it also has several round robins, I think up to 10 alternating round robin samples, which means that the same sample is never hit twice in a row. So you don't get that, what I like to call the machine gun sounding drums when you have repeated notes like our double bass pattern there. All right, so off screen, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do drum replacement on my snare and on my 3 toms, and I'll be right back. All right, so off screen, I went through and I replaced the snare top. I'm just layering it with my snare top and snare bottom tracks. I've completely replaced the first and second toms, so I've muted the original recordings for those. And then I've kept in the majority of the floor tom track just because there's some cymbal in there I like. And there's also sort of this riding tom idea here on eighth notes. And it just doesn't sound good with a replacer track. So I left those portions out. But the spots where there were like individual fills on the floor tom, I did layer in a sample. All right, so that's the Sean Pandy drums and how to use this free plugin for drum replacement in Logic Pro 10. I'll leave a link to download this in the video description below. Also, just a side note, if you're interested in learning more about proper drum recording and miking techniques and production techniques, you can check out my studio series on recording drums in Logic Pro 10 over at Mac Pro Video and ask.video.com. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. You can also head over to my Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, or if you'd like to make a monthly contribution to the channel, you can check me out at patreon.com/MusicTechHelpGuy. Thanks for the support, and thanks for watching.